In Hebrew, we call these days the Yamim Noraim, most often translated as the days of awe. Now, the depth of meaning in Noraim transcends any single word. It combines aspects of reverence and respect and awe and fear. The moment when we might feel most keenly this norah, this awe, fear, is when we read and sing the particular liturgy reserved just for these high holy days. Berosh Hashanah yikatevun uv'yom tzom Kippur yichatemun. On Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed. How many shall pass on, and how many shall come to be? Who shall see ripe age, and who shall not? Who shall live, and who shall die? And then comes that chilling list of all the horrible fates that might befall us this year. Who by fire and who by water, who by sword and who by beast, who by hunger and who by thirst, who by earthquake and who by plague, who by strangling and who by stoning. A young father and husband goes on a trip to participate in an endurance race. And in the midst of it, he has an adverse reaction, and he never comes home. A couple throws a joyous party to celebrate a shared milestone birthday. And then weeks later, one receives a terminal diagnosis and lives only a matter of months. A young mother moves into her own childhood home, the only place she ever wanted to raise her family. And then cancer, followed by years of courageous battling until the end. After a healthy pregnancy, in the midst of delivery, something goes wrong. The child lives merely hours. A mother and wife reaches the age of 66. And in the context of other losses, she lived a long life, but to her husband and her children and grandchildren and her friends, she died all too young. I officiated all of these funerals just in the last few months. As a rabbi, I often feel like I live life close to the bone, as I say. I have the privilege of being deeply enmeshed in the triumphs and tragedies of human lives, your lives, and the lives of this sacred community. Life can be wonderful and gorgeous. Life can be brutally tragic and unfair. There are moments that bring us to tears because they are indescribably transcendent. And there are moments that bring us to tears because they are so unspeakably sad. And when a family or a community is faced with inexplicable loss, it's natural to wonder about God. There is nothing I can say this morning that will make it better and that will take away the pain that so many of us are carrying. There's nothing I can say that will remove the images of our loved ones suffering. But fortunately, Judaism offers, if not answers or solutions, some responses. And most of all, Judaism can give us strength and direction in the face of tragedy. So first, I want you to know that Judaism distinguishes between evil and misfortune. Misfortune is the category of tragedies over which we humans have no control. Hurricanes, earthquakes, pandemics, cancer. We did nothing to deserve them. They are not punishment. We might consider them unfortunate bugs in God's incredibly complex system. And despite all of our technology and all of our ingenuity, we have not yet been able to conquer them. Evil, on the other hand, is a result of the exercise of human free will. Evil is the terrorist who holds our hostages underground, and the gunman with an automatic rifle who murders children in a church or a school. We wonder how God can allow such things to happen. According to our tradition, God created the world in 6 days, and then God stepped back. Because you see, the only way we human beings could exercise the gift of free will that God gave us is if God voluntarily withdrew God's self. And we call that intentional withdrawal of God's self tzimtzum. This gave us human beings the space, the freedom, and the opportunity to make our own choices. I certainly believe in the distinction between misfortune and free will, misfortune and evil. But let me tell you what I don't believe. I do not believe in a God who meddles in human affairs, choosing at whim who to smite. I do not believe in a God who doles out reward and punishment according to what each of us deserve. I and we have seen far too much undeserved suffering for such simplistic theology. I do not believe those who say that we mere humans can never know the aims and the purposes of the great Almighty. Why then did God endow us with such incredible strength of intellect, if not to ask the biggest of questions? And I do not believe in a God who brings suffering as some sort of test. There are passages in our tradition that suggest that God only tests the righteous, or only tests those who God knows can handle it. It is hard for me to believe that God selects particularly deserving people to suffer, while others live a charmed life. Now let me tell you about the God that I do believe in. I believe, as Rabbi Tarfon taught in ancient times, that the day is short, that there's a lot of work to do, and that the workers, that's all of us, are busy and sometimes distracted, but that the reward is great and that the Holy One is waiting. I believe in a God who watches from the sidelines, rooting us on, cheering when we do good, offering sympathy when we fail, and helping us do better next time. Because before God withdrew from the world, God gave us a set of instructions, the Torah. I have set before you this day blessing and curse, life and death. Choose life so that you and your children may thrive, God instructs us. God sets blessing and curse, life and death before us, and God gives us the free will to choose, but God is far from indifferent. God makes it clear what choice we are to make. Choose life so that you and your children may thrive. And I believe in a God who did not create a perfect world. We know our world is far from that. But who created human beings, all of us, to work in partnership with God, bringing much-needed wholeness and repair and peace to the world that God created, not yet finished. And so I would suggest to you that the purpose of the High Holy Day Liturgy is not to prompt us to consider all the ways that we might die or all the misfortune that might befall us. No, the purpose of this day is to consider how we want to live. Knowing that our lives could change from blessed to cursed in an instant. How do we want to spend our precious days and hours and minutes? What will we do, each of us, with this renewed chance at life? None of us can avoid tragedies. They will strike even the most fortunate of lives, and we have no choice but to endure them. But I believe in a God who weeps right alongside us when tragedy strikes. And maybe God gives us the strength to somehow transform that tragedy into opportunity, to exercise courage even in the face of challenge, to raise wonderful children even in the face of inexplicable loss, to choose life even in the face of death, and to pursue peace even in the face of trauma. As we observe Yom Kippur today, that age-old dream of peace, which has seemed so distressingly remote for so long, seems once again possible. I will leave the geopolitical analysis to others, or perhaps address it on another occasion. But as we sit here today, I have more hope than ever that our hostages will, God willing, return home, and that the war against Hamas will conclude. For much of the past 2 years, we have been caught between dueling certainties, as Yossi Klein Halevi said. Since midsummer, TI has been hosting weekly open conversations about Israel, and I'm proud that so many of you have shown up. You've shared your strong love and support for Israel as well as your questions. One congregant said, "I'm desperate to get our hostages back. I am desperate to defeat Hamas, and I am desperate for Israel to stop this destructive war." Another congregant, a strong, lifelong supporter of Israel, said, "October 7th was beyond comprehension, and Israel has done what it had to do. But now we're at a point where it's hard to reconcile what Israel is doing with what being a Jew is." And I know that so many of you have been feeling something very similar. From the start, I have been certain that this is a just war. And I'm also certain that it has not always been pursued justly. I'm certain that Hamas bears the primary responsibility for the suffering of the Gazan people. And over recent months, I grew to recognize that Israel bore a degree of responsibility for causing human suffering too. I'm certain that the Jewish people exist today only because we have power, real power, military power, and we are not afraid to use it. And I am certain that Jewish power must be used responsibly. Yes, our lives and this war are full of dueling certainties. I'm certain that Israel has done the right thing to protect Jewish lives, and that there have been days when I've been concerned that the war would do lasting harm to the Jewish soul. I feared that this conflict in which Israel was so very justified had become an endless war whose greatest burden had fallen not on Hamas itself, but rather on our IDF soldiers and their families, on our hostages and their families, and on the Gazan people. So even before this week's peace proposal, I was prepared to say from this bima, I am certain that it is time for Israel's leadership to end the war, to bring the hostages home, to exile Hamas from Gaza and pursue their operatives over the course of the coming years, and to chart a course for a better future for all Gazans. And so now I find myself both thrilled and relieved at the possibility that this war will now end and that our hostages will come home. And I'm also reminded of the sobering words shared by Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin just before Rosh Hashanah in 1993. He said, "You don't make peace with your friends. You make it with very unsavory enemies." And thus, I am also burdened on this day with doubt in the pit of my stomach. Worry that Hamas will scuttle this proposed deal, or that the right wing of this Israeli government will force the war to drag on. On Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed. Who will live and who shall die? Lives hang in the balance. We have the opportunity to choose life. So let all involved see life through to the end. All of us sitting here who have enjoyed the gift of making it to this day, we pray that we will make it as well to the next days of awe, even though we have no idea what the new year has in store for us. No one knows who shall be secure and who shall be driven, who shall be tranquil and who shall be troubled, who shall be poor and who shall be rich, who shall be humbled and who shall be exalted. But I will tell you that this year, I finally learned how to define a miracle. I was invited to teach my kids' first grade classes about Hanukkah. But the school was clear. I wasn't to teach anything religious. I understood, and by the way, I agreed 1,000% because I would not want anyone else teaching my kids about another religion in their public school. But how could I teach Hanukkah without the miracle? And so I finally decided to explain to the students, a miracle is something you never thought would happen, but somehow it did. I believe in miracles. Because this year I officiated at the naming and bris of miracle babies whose parents despaired that their dreams of ever having a child would come true. And I officiated the weddings of couples who found new love after tragedy and loss had upended their lives. And I have officiated bar and bat mitzvahs on this bima for children whose parents thought that such a milestone was impossible because of their children's capacities. But we knew that surely they were capable of it. We Jews do not believe in life after death. In all the tomes of Jewish wisdom written over the millennia, almost nothing is written about what happens after we die. So I conclude this. We believe that you get one shot, and you do the best you can with it. Because nobody knows what happens next. Nobody even knows what will happen tomorrow. But I believe that deep down, each of us knows, and God surely knows, what we did with our one shot. So choose life. Visit your parents. Leave work. Put down your phone. Spend time with your children. Go to the wedding. Plan that dinner with friends. Go away for the weekend. As this new year begins, God, we commit to choosing life. And we call upon you, God, to do the same. The liturgy does not speak in the language of certainties. No, prayer envisions the world as we hope it might be. And so, Melech Hafetz B'Chaim, we call upon you, God, to delight in life. We call upon you, God, to choose life for us and to write each of our names in the book of life for your sake, O God of life. Ken Yehi Ratzon.